Hello everyone, this video is all about Rahu and Rahu Mahadasha and Rahu in different houses and signs. So if you're about to enter your Rahu Mahadasha, or if you're going through your Rahu Mahadasha or Antardasha, I hope you find this video useful. So before you click into where Rahu is in your chart, which house is it in, I would like you to pay attention to the initial part of the video, because I'm going to tell you how to read the position of Rahu in your charts. Alright, because it's a bit tricky. It's not like any other planet, because Rahu is not a real entity. So we have to understand how to read Rahu from where it's placed. Okay. Also, I'm going to tell you about where Rahu is strong and Rahu is not very strong, and what are the houses, what are the signs Rahu is strong in or Rahu is not strong in, and what are the ill effects of Rahu and what are the good effects of Rahu. Rahu is not just a malefic planet. Rahu is capable of doing a lot of good things in one's chart if we have a proper understanding of Rahu. Okay, so that we can tune into the positive energy of Rahu instead of the negative and the malefic effects of Rahu, and how to stay away from it. All right. But before that, we need to understand what Rahu is. So I'm going to tell you a small story from our ancient saints on how they have explained Rahu to us. All right. So Rahu was not just the head, and Ketu was not just the body. They were one person. They were called Swarbhanu. The person was called Swarbhanu. It was actually a demon or an asura. All right. And this asura wanted to become immortal. That was the only desire Swarbhanu had. Apart from many other, this was the main desire, that he wanted to be immortal. And only the gods were allowed to be immortal. So the gods were churning Amrita out of the ocean. Amrita is nothing but a liquid that you drink, and that makes you immortal. All right. So this is a story from the mythology. Okay. So all the gods were standing in a line where the Amrita was being churned out from the ocean. Okay, I'm going to try and see if I can add some clips from the ancient stories, so that you can get a visual picture of what happened. All right, and Swarbhanu, disguised as a god, he was not a god, he was an asura or a demon. Okay, and he stood in the line and waited for his turn. And when he was about to drink Amrita, Mahadeva and Vishnu figured out that he was a demon. So what did Vishnu do? Vishnu had his Sudarshana Chakra, or the discus that's there on his index finger, and he threw it at Swarbhanu so that he could chop his head off. And he chopped his head off. But in the meantime, Swarbhanu drank the Amrita. Alright? So what happened? He did not die. So his chopped head kept living, and the rest of the body also kept living. So the head is known as Rahu and the body is known as Ketu. All right, and Mahadeva later on gave Rahu and Ketu the position of grahas or planets, and they always go retrograde. Okay, and they're always 180 degrees from each other, because the head is chopped. They can never meet. So if Rahu is in the first house, Ketu is always in the 7th house, 180 degrees from each other. If Rahu is in the 4th house, Ketu is always in the 10th house. All right, and they always go retrograde. So this is how the ancient saints have explained the story of Rahu and Ketu. Okay, so we're going to focus on Rahu today. So I'm going to only refer to Swarbhanu as Rahu, just the head. Okay, so from this story we are going to decipher certain things about Rahu, so that we can understand Rahu in our charts. So the first thing that we can establish about Rahu is Rahu was a master of disguise. Okay? Why? Because Rahu stood in the line with all the gods. Imagine Suryadev, sun god, Chandradev, moon god, Indradev, Mahadeva, Shiva, Vishnu. They were all there, and he fooled everyone. So he obviously had some planning and brains. All right. So first thing we'll establish is Rahu is a master of disguise. Second thing is Rahu is also very intelligent, right? Rahu made this master plan because his desire was to become immortal. Okay, all he wanted to do is drink Amrita and become immortal. All right, so he made this master plan on how he will accomplish this. All right, so Rahu is a master planner. Number two, Rahu knew that if he was caught, the gods would kill him. Okay, so what can we establish? We can establish that Rahu has a very, very high risk-taking appetite. All right, to fulfill his desire, he can even risk his life. Okay, so that's the second thing we will establish about Rahu. Okay, the third thing we'll establish about Rahu is Rahu's intention was not completely fulfilled. Why? Because he wanted to become immortal, but in the process he lost his head. All right, so he was able to drink Amrita, but he could not enjoy the life of a immortal being. Okay, so three things. I'm gonna write it right here so that it's flashing in front of you. First thing about Rahu is a master of disguise. Second thing, Rahu is a master planner, also very, very intelligent. Okay. Third thing is Rahu's intentions are not fully accomplished. All right. So, moving on, more about Rahu. All right. Now, the other things that we know about Rahu is not a real entity. You can't see Rahu. Rahu is smoke. Rahu is illusion. Rahu is a big shadow. Okay. So, mostly Rahu deals with something which is not real. Rahu is the significator of anything that is illusion, maya, smoke. All right. Also, Rahu is just the head. Okay, and which is why if you just Google pictures of Rahu, okay, or see images of Rahu, you would see just the head or Rahu swallowing the sun. Okay, what the ancient saints mean is Rahu is not swallowing the sun. Rahu is causing the eclipse, a shadow so big that it can eclipse the sun. All right. It also means that Rahu has endless desires. All right, because there is no body, right? So if Rahu wants to eat something, it doesn't know how much to eat because Rahu will never stop eating. There is no stomach, there is no body, right? So whatever is going in is going in. All right, so Rahu also has endless desires. All right, so after establishing these facts about Rahu, now let's move to how we will read Rahu from a birth chart. Okay, so how we will read Rahu from a birth chart, I will give you some examples. Okay, so let's pull up Pisces chart. Okay, so let's pull up a Pisces chart. So in a Pisces ascendant, if Rahu is sitting in the 4th house in Gemini, all right, and let's consider that Rahu is sitting alone there, all right. Firstly, Rahu will take the lordship of that house, which means Rahu will start behaving like Mercury because Mercury is the lord of Gemini, all right. And how we will read this is we will have to look at where Mercury sits in the chart. Okay, so if Mercury is sitting in your 1st house, which means Mercury in Pisces, Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. All right, so Rahu will give malefic or bad results if you have this kind of a setup. All right, because it will take the energy of Mercury from the 1st house. All right. Now we'll look at a conjunction. If Rahu is sitting with let's consider Venus. All right. So Venus and Rahu get along with each other. So I'm going to put a table here so that you know who are the friends of Rahu and who Rahu considers as enemy. All right. So Rahu is pretty friendly with Venus because Venus is nothing but Shukracharya. Venus was the teacher of Rahu. All right. So Venus and Rahu combination is pretty good, especially if the degrees of Venus are lower than the degrees of Rahu. All right. And we have to look at the Rahu's degrees in reverse because Rahu is retrograde. So if you have Rahu at 29 or 28 degrees, that means Rahu is at low degrees. And if you have Rahu at 1 or 2 degrees, that means Rahu is in very high degrees. All right. So Venus pretty much can control Rahu. So Rahu kind of listens a little bit to Venus. If Jupiter and Rahu is together, it's considered a good sign because Jupiter controls Venus. Jupiter controls Rahu. Rahu likes to listen to Jupiter. Rahu likes to be like the Guru. All right, like Brihaspati. Rahu and Mercury are also friends. Rahu and Saturn are friends. Rahu doesn't get along with Sun, doesn't get along with Moon, definitely doesn't get along with Mars. Okay, so apart from Jupiter and Venus, if Rahu is in conjunction with any other planet, Rahu will control that planet. All right. So wherever, if for example, if Rahu is sitting with Mars here, it will give negative results because Rahu and Mars will cause a very strong yoga and Angarak yoga in the 4th house of this Pisces ascendant. All right. Because it will cause chaos and affect the peace of mind because 4th house is what gives you a peace of mind. All right, 4th house is the house of your home. It may cause chaos in your home if Rahu and Mars sit there, especially Gemini because Gemini is an enemy sign for Mars. All right. So I hope we have a fair understanding of how we read the position of Rahu. If Rahu is alone, we will look at where the depositor is and the position of the depositor. Okay, the lord of that house. If Rahu is in conjunction with the planets, apart from Jupiter and Venus, Rahu will control the other planet. It will control and take over the other planet. All right, because Rahu is the head; it doesn't have a body, so it will take over and start controlling the other planet. All right. Now we will look at signs that Rahu is strong in, so that we have an idea of how strong your Rahu is in your chart. All right. So Rahu is considered good in signs like Taurus. Rahu is very considered strong in all the whoever he is friends with. Okay. Who are Rahu's friends? Rahu's friends are Venus, Mercury, Saturn. These are friends of Rahu. So Rahu does really good in Venus signs, which means Rahu is good in Taurus. Rahu is also very good, considered exalted in Gemini and Taurus. Right? Some astrologers think that Rahu is exalted in Taurus. Others say that Rahu is exalted in Gemini. Rahu also does really good in Virgo. Rahu does reasonably well in Capricorn. Rahu does really well in Aquarius, sign of Saturn. Some schools of thought also believe that Rahu is part owner of Aquarius. So, yep, you can type in the comments about what you think about that and where, which sign Rahu sits in your chart and how strong Rahu is. Okay. But we have to remember Rahu is a shadow planet, it's smoke, it's not a real entity. So wherever Rahu sits, it will start assuming the role of that particular sign. So if Rahu is sitting in Taurus, Rahu will start behaving like Venus. If Rahu is sitting in Capricorn, it will start behaving like Saturn. If Rahu is sitting in Sagittarius, it will start behaving like Sagittarius. If Rahu is sitting in Gemini, he'll start behaving like Mercury. Alright. So now that we have established which signs Rahu is strong in, I will talk about certain signs Rahu is very, very malefic in. For example, Rahu is very malefic in Leo. All right, so if you have Rahu in Leo, you need to watch out and make sure that you don't take on the negative traits of Rahu, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Okay, so do not be scared or start thinking about, oh, my Rahu is in Leo or my Rahu is in Scorpios. Is it not good? Or Rahu is in the sign of Cancer. Rahu in Cancer is not so bad, but it can cause lots of ups and downs emotionally. Okay, so we will get into all of that. But before that, we will look at, now that we've looked at signs that Rahu is strong in, we will look at houses that Rahu does well in. Rahu can give mixed results in the first house, depends on which sign it is in. All right, Rahu is considered quite strong in the second house, third house, sixth house, to some extent the seventh house, 10th house and 11th house. Okay, Rahu is considered really strong in the second, third, sixth, 10th and the 11th house. Okay, so now you have to just add this all together so that you can figure this out in your chart. If your Rahu is in the houses that I mentioned where Rahu is supposed to give positive results and the sign is also good, that means your Rahu is pretty strong and should give you positive results. All right, now this will only apply if Rahu is in conjunction or Rahu is sitting alone in these signs, or Rahu is in conjunction with one of Rahu's friends. But if Rahu is with Sun, or Rahu is with an enemy planet, that or Rahu is with Mars, or Rahu is with Moon, it may give you malefic or different results. Okay, now let's look at the houses one by one, and especially I will talk about your Rahu Mahadasha. Okay, so you can check your Rahu Mahadasha by seeing which house Rahu is in, and also look at transiting Rahu. Where is Rahu right now? Rahu is transiting in the sign of Pisces right now. All right, which is why in the world you can see a lot of water related catastrophe. I read some time ago there was a flood in Dubai. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think I read it somewhere where there's a lot of fake news on the internet. So can you imagine, Dubai is a desert area, there is flood in a desert area. So wherever Rahu goes, Rahu usually causes ups and downs in that particular house or that particular sign. Okay, so we need to look at the malefics of Rahu, and we need to figure out if we can find a way where we can channelize the positive energy of Rahu. So this is what we're going to do in the rest of the video. So that the viewers are able to channelize the good of Rahu instead of the negative traits of Rahu. This is my intention of making this video. I do not want to scare people. If your Rahu Mahadasha is started or you're in your Rahu Mahadasha, I get a lot of consultations from people in Rahu Mahadasha that, okay, I've lost my job, or my business is booking losses, everything, all my connections are going off. So all these things happen in Rahu, all right? But hopefully we can find ways on how we can get the positives of Rahu and channelize that in our lives. All right. So Rahu is also all technology, by the way. Okay. YouTube is all Rahu. Anything that where you're using technology, computers, phones, all technology is Rahu. Okay. Anything that happens behind the scene is all Rahu. Rahu is all smoke. Okay, anything that is not real is all Rahu. Okay, Rahu is also the significator of foreign lands. Okay, anything which is breaking the rules is all Rahu. Because remember the story that I told you about Swarbhanu, breaking the rules. Anything that you have unlimited desires of is all Rahu. Okay. So if you're suddenly realizing that, oh my God, I have so much desire to make money, it's endless, it's probably being given or induced by Rahu in your charts. Okay. The problem with Rahu is Rahu's desires never get fulfilled. Remember, Rahu doesn't have a body or a stomach. Okay. So the whole thing about having endless desires is caused by Rahu in your charts. And that desire could be of anything, all right? If it's Rahu is well placed and Jupiter is with Rahu, you should have endless desire of gaining knowledge, which is a positive aspect of Rahu, right? Especially with Jupiter and it's well placed, Rahu can also give you an endless a desire for gaining endless knowledge, which is good, or Rahu helping people endlessly, right? So not all desires are bad desires, right? As long as it is doing good for the world, Rahu can be doing good things as well. All right. Now now that we have established certain things about Rahu, I'm going to repeat one more time some facts that we have established about Rahu. Number one, Rahu is the master of disguise. Rahu likes to take shortcuts. All right. Rahu doesn't want to pray to Mahadeva or Brahma and get the boon that, hey, can you give me immortality? But what Rahu wants to do is Rahu wants to trick the gods and drink Amrita, all right? So you can also see Rahu is mischievous, all right? Rahu doesn't want to follow principles. Rahu wants to break principles, okay? Number two, Rahu is also very intelligent. Imagine plotting. Rahu is all about plotting and making that plan, master plan to get to what you want, all right? And the last thing that we spoke about is Rahu's intentions are not fully met, all right? It's half met. I mean, he wanted to become immortal. He became immortal, but lost his head in the process, okay? We've looked at which signs Rahu is strong in, okay? We've looked at friends of Rahu and enemies of Rahu. We've also seen which houses Rahu does well in, okay? Now, let's look at Rahu in each house, all right? So, Rahu in the first house. So, Rahu in the first house becomes very, very, very powerful because any planet in the first house has direct traits of that particular planet. So no matter what planet sits in your first house becomes one of the most important planets for you, okay? As important as your Lagna Lord. So for example, if you are a Aquarius Ascendant, okay? So Rahu is in your first house, Aquarius. It will become as important as Saturn because Saturn has the lordship of Aquarius and Saturn is your Lagna Lord, all right? Now let's look at certain traits of Rahu in the first house. No matter which ascendant you are, it will depend on which ascendant it is because I've already spoken about which signs Rahu does good in. So if you are an Aquarius ascendant, Rahu in the first house should give you good results. I'm talking about Rahu being alone. If Rahu is with the enemy planets that Rahu considers enemy, it may give negative results, all right? If Rahu is alone or it's with friendly planets like Mercury, Venus, or Jupiter is not really a friend, but Jupiter controls Rahu. So Rahu tries to be like Jupiter, all right? Will give positive results. Rahu in the first house will make a person very intelligent. Why? Because Rahu is very intelligent himself, all right? It's a great placement for people to start their own business, but not in partnership. Business on their own, especially in a foreign land or something to do with people from far away from where they are born, different cultures. It also gives a person extremely high risk-taking appetite. Okay? So, to become a good business person, you need a high risk-taking appetite. Okay, so it gives very, very high risk-taking appetite. And if Rahu is in a good sign and the depositor of your first house or your Lagna Lord is also very strong, you can become a very strong, powerful business person. It also makes a person extremely tech savvy. You could be related to the IT industry, or you could be doing something with technology. Whatever you're doing, you would be using a lot of technology. So these are people who could be surrounded by gadgets everywhere. Okay. So also people look at going to foreign lands to pursue a career. Okay. Any careers to do with technology is seen from Rahu. Anything to do with close associations or business where foreigners are involved, people from different countries are involved, is seen from Rahu in the first house. Now I'll talk about some of the negatives. All right. So people with this placement could look at shortcuts to accomplish what they want, because Rahu becomes a trait of their personality. So if you have Rahu in the first house, please do not try to take shortcuts. People who want to give a bribe to pass a certain tender or get their work done. Okay. They could also lie. People with Rahu in the first house could become compulsive liars to accomplish what they want. All right. So this is something that you need to look out for. All right. They could also be, they could have bulimia. Bulimia is a food related disorder. Okay. They might also put on weight if Rahu is in a enemy sign like Leo, or if Rahu is in Scorpio. People could have eating disorders. Okay. People could be into intoxication. They could be into eating too much sweets. They could be using some drugs. They could be obsessed with smoking or alcohol intake. Rahu in the first house. All right. Rahu in the first house could also give you migraine or head related issues, could give psychological issues. It could give obsessive compulsive disorder. All right. Rahu in the, if it's again, all this is if it's mostly in enemy ascendants, first house. Okay. It could give psychological problems as well. Depression can be seen from Rahu in the first house, especially if it's conjunct with moon, and if you're a Scorpio ascendant, you could have depression, or you could need help from a psychiatrist. Okay. Now let's look at Rahu in the second house. So Rahu in the second house is usually considered as a pretty good placement in today's world, because wherever Rahu is, Rahu expands that particular house. All right. So second house is the house of our savings. Second house is the house of our ancestor, wealth from our ancestors and family wealth. So Rahu, people with Rahu in the second house are seen with usually their money is sorted and they are good with savings, but they could have some ups and downs in their savings. All right. So be careful, especially if the sign is not very good. If it's in Cancer, or if it's in Scorpio, or if it's in Leo, you need to be a little careful. If you have Rahu in the second house, they could have ups and downs in their family and savings. All right. Since it also denotes their family and their speech. So they could have ups and downs with relationship in their family as well. All right. People could again not be very honest with Rahu in the second house, because second house is your speech. People who lie a lot can be seen from the second house as well. Rahu in the second house. All right. It's a very good placement, especially if it's in Taurus, or if it's in Capricorn or Aquarius, or if it's in especially in Taurus or Venus related sign like Libra also, for food and beverages industry. Okay. Good business people can be seen from Rahu in the second house. Their money could multiply, especially in the Rahu Mahadasha. So keep an eye on that. Negatives I've already spoken about. They could be slightly dishonest if Rahu is not very well placed. They could also have issues with marriage. All right, because usually a lot of astrologers see second or third marriage from the second house. So they could have marriage related issues as well with Rahu in the second house. Okay. Their family could have something to do with foreign lands. Okay. their family could be from the IT background as well, or technology background. Okay, let's look at Rahu in the third house. All right, now Rahu is in the third house is very interesting. Something that I've observed about Rahu in the third house is usually they are the youngest sibling, youngest one in the family. All right, in most cases. All right, and if they have a younger sibling, their relationship with the younger sibling may not be very good. Okay, because Rahu, whichever house it goes, it causes ups and downs. That's a trait of Rahu. Okay, even if Rahu is strong and stable, it does. The malefic effects of Rahu are always there. So Rahu in the third house, people could be extremely good with their communication. All right, because third house signifies communication. So people who are into corporate communication, or they are doing something with social media where communication is the key, and they are using all advanced technology, it's a very, very good combination. Okay, Rahu is technology and communication. All right, people with Rahu in the third house could also speak multiple languages. Especially they would know more than one or one foreign language really good. So if you're from India, you might speak English really well, or if you're from Europe somewhere, you could be able to speak 3 or 4 European languages like Dutch, French, German, and you will be pretty good at it, right? So people also do really good with communication, with their writing and typing. Typing skills are really, really good. Okay, so people who own businesses to do with communication, this is a pretty good placement for Rahu in the third house. People with this setting could also be obsessed about doing short travels. Every weekend they go out somewhere for traveling here and there. Okay, I've got a long weekend. Let's go 3 days. We will go do this. We'll go do that. So they have a lot of interest in that. All right. Now the relationship with the younger siblings may not be very good. So keep an eye on that. These are certain things about Rahu in the third house. Now let's look at Rahu in the fourth house. So again, we will look at the strength of Rahu, which sign it is sitting in. So Rahu in the fourth house can cause ups and downs in your home, in your house. The relationship with your mother could be a little stressful. At times, you might see, I know someone that says, hey, I really love my mother, but the moment I visit my mother, after 3-4 days, we are having a fight. Okay. So the further we stay away, the relationship is better. Okay, so you could have a Rahu in your fourth house if this is the kind of relationship you have with your mom. Okay, Rahu can also drive you away from your birthplace and take you to a foreign land very, very far away from you. Especially during the Rahu Mahadasha, or if Rahu is transiting through your fourth house. So you need to look at the transits of Rahu as well. Okay. The other thing I've noticed is Rahu in the fourth house could give you disinterest in your birthplace. Okay, you may not like your own birthplace and you want to go live somewhere else, somewhere far away. Okay. So these are certain things about Rahu. About health, I have to tell you something. Rahu in the fourth house, you need to be a little careful, especially women. They need to be careful about breast cancer. So make sure that you are checking your breasts every now and again. It can cause breast cancer. And even smokers, you need to be very careful. If you're a smoker and if you have Rahu in the fourth house, it's not a very good placement for you. It can also give you chest related issues. This entire belt is your fourth house, and remember, wherever Rahu goes, it does cause you problem. Rahu in the fourth house also, usually people have no interest in their work. Interest in the sense they might be working every day from morning to evening, but they don't like their works. They don't like their jobs. Okay, so if you have this, please mention in the comments and let me know what work you do and why you don't have any interest in it. All right. you might also want to do a lot of cardio, because Rahu can also affect the heart with this particular placement, especially if it is conjunct with a malefic and your sun is not really placed well. It can give you heart related issues. Okay, so these are some of the good and bad aspects of Rahu in the 4th house. Let's look at Rahu in the 5th house. Rahu in the 5th house is not considered very good. Okay, it causes something called as a Pitra dosha, but there's nothing to be scared. We will try to get the positives out of Rahu's placement in the 5th house. The positives are Rahu in the 5th house makes you very, very intelligent. The most intelligent people are seen from Rahu in the 5th house. You could be a stand-up comedian if Mercury is placed well. You could be in the entertainment industry, all right, and master entertainment. People who are masters in entertainment, right? They are the charm of the party wherever they are there. Rahu, these are people are seen from Rahu in the 5th house. Rahu in the 5th house. The problem is even if they are successful, they fail to be happy. Their desires don't end. It's a great combination for art and creative work. So Rahu in the 5th house, they could be extremely creative people and doing fantastic artwork. But they could have issues about being happy, and they are not happy with their own artwork. But if other people look at their artwork, they say, wow, this is amazing. But they themselves are not very satisfied with what they do. Okay, it could cause drifts between their children if you have Rahu in the 5th house. Okay, it's not a very good placement for women. They might have a miscarriage or abortion. Okay, people with Rahu in the 5th house should make an extra effort to make sure that they're connecting with their children. Okay, it can cause ups and downs with the relationship with your children. So if you have Rahu in the 5th house, and if children are young right now, you should take extra effort to make sure that you are connecting with your children, and you're not letting the malefic influences of Rahu affect you. Okay, Rahu in the 5th house, great for intelligence people who are involved in any kind of a job or profession where intelligence is the key. Okay, chess players can be seen from Rahu in the 5th house. All right, grandmasters can be seen Rahu in the 5th house. All right, let's look at Rahu in the. Okay, one more thing before I go to the next one. Rahu in the 5th house can cause stomach related issues. Okay, if you have acidity or anything to do with the stomach, people could eat a lot. People could have eating disorders as well with stomach with Rahu because it's the stomach area. So if you have Rahu in the 5th house, your priority should be your gut health. If you're especially starting your Rahu Mahadasha at a later point in your life, you need to make sure that you do not involve in intoxications. All right, eat very simple food. Okay, all right, let's look at Rahu in the 6th house. Rahu in the 6th house, I consider this as a very good placement. Why? Because 6th house is the house of enemies, disease, debts, enemies, past life, enemies from past life. So Rahu in the 6th house, since Rahu is known to be a malefic planet, Rahu helps you win over your enemies. Interesting, isn't it? So not just enemies, Rahu also helps you recover from diseases. Okay, so Rahu in the 6th house, especially if it's in a mercurial sign like Gemini or Virgo, is considered really good. Okay, even in Taurus is considered really good. So if you have Mercury, if you have Rahu in the 6th house, and if you are having if there's a court case that is going on for years and years, this might be the time that you might win, and it might be you might be getting a lump sum payment with this particular placement. See, malefic planets do good in malefic houses. What are the bad houses? 3, 6, 8, and 12, right? So Rahu could give you good results in the 6th house. All right, Rahu could also have unfinished business for your pets here. Even Rahu in the 12th house. because Ketu will be in the 6th house. You know, you could have pets, you could be looking at nurturing pets, or you could be involved in some kind of business or association with looking after animals. All right. Rahu in the 6th house could. Now I'll talk a little bit about the negatives. So these were the positives. So Rahu in the 6th house, people could use other people's money. You know, people could take money from other people and not pay it back. So if you have Rahu in the 6th house, do not do that. If you have borrowed money from a financial institution or from your family and your friends, make sure that you pay that money back. Okay. People who are living off of other people's money is also seen from this particular placement of Rahu. Okay. Now your stomach, your kidney areas are seen from here. So you may, if Rahu is not in a good house, or if it's affected by even Saturn here, or Mars or Sun, you need to look after your lower portion of the body, especially your kidney area, your lower back area, and see if you make sure that part, especially if you're starting Rahu in your later portion of your life, that body part of yours could give you trouble. All right. Overall, Rahu in the 6th house is considered good. Okay, it has more positives than negatives. Let's look at Rahu in the 7th house. Rahu in the 7th house, I do not consider this as a very good placement for marriage. Okay. Now, a lot of astrologers may disagree with me, but Rahu in the 7th house could cause a separation or a divorce. Okay, because see, you must understand. See, Rahu is a planet of desires, endless desires, and in today's social contract, today's social structure, we are looking at marriage where one person is supposed to, unless you're in the Middle East countries, all right, one person marrying another person and they're living happily ever after. Okay. But Rahu throws a lot of desires in the 7th house, and your spouse could cheat on you if you have Rahu in the 7th house. Okay, so this is not every time. Like, please don't think that, oh, I have Rahu in the 7th house, my wife or my husband is cheating on us. It's not true. But I have seen in many cases that there has been a separation or some kind of cheating involved with Rahu in the 7th house, or sometimes you yourself cheat. Or there's something that happens between the partnership. So we can also see a spouse from a completely different cultural background or a different country altogether. Okay, or if they're not from a different country, they could be born in a different country. All right. Same applies for Rahu in the 4th house. Your mom, your mom could be born in a different country. All right. So Rahu in the 7th house, you could have business partners from foreign lands, or people who have something to do, or they have an established business in a different country. Okay. Especially if it's in Taurus or if it's in Virgo, it is considered good. So Rahu in the 7th house, and if the depository of Mercury or Venus or even Saturn is very well placed, if your Saturn is exalted, it can be a very strong combination for owning a business, especially if technology is involved, because Rahu is all about technology. Okay, if Rahu is in one of the mercurial signs like Gemini and Virgo, make sure that communication is involved. Social media can be seen from there, business through social media. If you're a Pisces ascendant and if you have Rahu in Virgo here, and if you're into social media and your Mercury is also there with Rahu, it's a very strong combination for being an influencer, or starting a business where social media is your primary source of income. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Am I missing something out? So 7th house, business partnership, not a very good placement for a long-term relationship or marriage, especially if Rahu is negative. I've already explained in the initial part of the video. So if you haven't watched it and just clicked at the timestamp, I've explained in the first part of the video how to see the strength of Rahu and how to read Rahu. Okay. So let's move on. Let's go to Rahu in the 8th house. Now Rahu in the 8th house is a bit tricky. Okay. Now Rahu in the 8th house can make a person a millionaire as well, and Rahu in the 8th house can make a millionaire into a beggar. Okay. Now we have to see the strength of Rahu. We have to see, because 8th house is the house of ups and downs, and Rahu is the planet that gives you sudden ups and sudden downs, right? Rahu is endless desire, so exalted business people can be seen from Rahu in the 8th house, because they have gone into the right field. So reading Rahu is very important. So if you have just clicked on the timestamp and come to Rahu, the 8th house, look at the initial part of the video where I've explained how to read Rahu. Is very important. Okay, the depositor is very, very important. So Rahu in the 8th house, if it's really well placed, can give you lots and lots of money into the stock exchange, cryptos, or anything to do with speculation, where your wealth can multiply really quickly. You know, like the cryptos, right? You buy cryptos and in a few months it's gone 1,000 or 10,000 times. Okay, it's a good placement for that. But again, people lose a lot of money as well, right? So you need to be very careful if you have Rahu in the 8th house. People with Rahu in the 8th house have immense desire to learn new things, and they want to explore the unknown, the occult. All right. So great position for a research work, even for astrology. Rahu in the 8th house. Lots of astrologers or people who have great interest in astrology or spirit realm or the unknown realm or tarot card readers, you know, exploring the unknown is all seen from the 8th house. Detectives, you know, people who are FBI or, you know, secret services, raw, all seen from the 8th house. They're all investigators, are all seen from the 8th house. They have great curiosity, and which is why they learn a lot of things. Okay. So if you have a person who, a person with Rahu in the 8th house, you will see they are just curious to know about so many different things. They are talking about aliens and UFOs. They're going through documentaries and watching all kinds of YouTube videos about aliens and spirits and ghosts and all the unknown realm. Okay. Also a great placement for research work. People who are doing research, scientists, can be seen from this particular placement of Rahu. Okay. Now the ill effects of Rahu, I have to talk about the malefic effects of Rahu. So Rahu in the 8th house can cause problems with your genital area, your sexual organs. Males and females, you need to, especially females, you need to look out for Rahu in the 8th house. It could cause problems with the uterus as well. Okay. STDs, issues with the sexual organs are all seen, because 8th house is that belt. All right. Your hip area. Okay. You need to be a little careful about that, about the body part, especially with Rahu in the 8th house. Avoid gambling. Like, I know people with a Rahu in the 8th house will have great interest in going to the casinos or, doing or gambling away their money. So please be very careful. And if you are interested in it, make sure that you are betting an amount that you're okay to lose, and don't get obsessive about trying to explore the unknown. The problem with the thing is, a lot of people think that Rahu in the 8th house people are gambling because they like gambling, but at times I think that Rahu in the 8th house people are just trying to understand the unknown and the odds of gambling, and trying to understand luck and coincidences through gambling. Okay. So make sure you don't end up losing a lot of money and gamble away. Rahu in the 8th house could also be heavily into intoxication, so be very careful. Do not intoxicate too much. No usage of alcohol, drugs, smoking. It's not good for you if you have Rahu in the 8th house. All right. Right, let's move to Rahu in the ninth house. Rahu in the ninth house. Rahu in the ninth house, very, very interesting placement. I do not consider this placement as a good placement, so don't be disappointed. But if Rahu is conjunct with Jupiter, this becomes a very good placement. Even if it's with Venus to some extent, this is a good placement because these people have a great desire to travel the world and learn different new things, especially if it's happening in the sign of Sagittarius, or if it's happening in the sign of Cancer as well to some extent. All right, people in this placement could they may have trouble finishing their graduation or higher studies. Okay, they may have a very difficult relationship with their father, or even their gurus or their teachers. All right, they might have had a very big problem in their college, completing their higher education, because of this one person who was probably their professor or their guru or their teacher, that made their life very difficult. Because that ninth house is the house of higher learning and your teachers and your gurus, and when Rahu sits there, it causes ups and downs in that particular house. Okay. These people could also be very obsessed with travel, long distance travel. They might want to travel the world. I want to go to Thailand for 3 months. I want to go to Africa for 4 months. All right, they want to travel a lot. Okay, so if you have this placement, make sure that your relationship with your father and your teachers and your gurus, and especially if you're a student, is not getting affected. I've seen it in many cases. All right. These people, Rahu in the ninth house, they may be born in a Christian family, but they don't want to follow Christianity. Same for any other. They might be born in a Hindu family, but they have interest in some other religion. Or they don't have interest in any religion at all. They're nihilists. They're atheists. They're like, we don't like religion. There is no religion. So the religion, the religion that you're born in, Rahu will break the rules, and you would have interest in following a different occult altogether. All right. So Rahu in the ninth house could be, you may believe in a different religion altogether. All right. Not the religion that your family was into. All right. So that's something that I have observed about Rahu in the ninth house. Okay. Also, Rahu in the ninth house, you need to be very careful not to break the rules or principles. All right, you may get into trouble. Okay, because Rahu in the ninth house wants to always break the principles or rules. Okay, so don't do that. Yeah, especially if your sun is not very well placed, or if your Rahu is conjunct with sun. Make sure that you're not getting into trouble with law and order. All right. Now let's talk about Rahu in the 10th house. Rahu in the 10th house is one of the best positions for Rahu. Okay. Also look at the sign, especially if it's in Taurus, Gemini, or if it's in Aquarius. It's in Virgo. Fantastic position for Rahu if it's in Virgo. If you're a Sagittarius ascendant, if you're a Leo ascendant, if you have Rahu in the 10th house, it's fantastic. I will talk about the good things first. So these people are, firstly, Rahu in the 10th house are extremely workaholic people, especially if it's in a good sign. They really like to do many different things. So if you are a 50-year-old person, and if you have Rahu in the 10th house, you would have done so many different things in life. Okay. It is looked as Rahu in the 10th house is a very good position for career, because Rahu expands. See, Rahu is a planet that expands everything. Okay, so it expands the career as well. So people may be very successful in their careers with Rahu in the 10th house, especially if it's placed in a good sign, or if it's in conjunction with a friend. For example, if you have Rahu and Mercury and you're a Sagittarius ascendant, it is considered very, very powerful, very, very strong. All right, lots of success in business is seen from there. If you're not working, if you're in a job, it's considered as a Raj Yoga. Okay, which means it's a very, very powerful, good position for Rahu. Okay, because Rahu wants to do things. All right, so those are the good things about Rahu in the 10th house. Now let's talk about the not very good things. So Rahu in the 10th house could also cause a lot of problems at your home, your family, and especially with your father. Okay, they may not get along with their father. Okay, I've seen in some cases. Rahu in the 10th house could cause ups and downs in your job. So like I said, that's one of the good things and also the bad things. All right, they may not be able to keep jobs for a very long time. Okay, because Rahu will want him to do, okay, now let's do this, now let's do that. So you can be a jack of all trades and master of none if you have Rahu in the 10th house. Okay, so if you have Rahu in this position, and if it's not, if other planets are not very well placed, if your 10th lord, you need to look at your 10th lord, if your 10th lord is stable or not. Okay, so if you are a Sagittarius ascendant, you need to see if Mercury is well placed or not. If Mercury is not in a good house, if Mercury goes to the 8th house, okay, it is not a very good position. So you need to be careful that you continue your job for a very long time instead of switching jobs. All right, but overall there is more good of Rahu in the 10th house because it expands the career. These people end up doing lots of different things, and all are dependent on what sign it is in. If it's a Venus related sign, they go into the creative field, or they go into a field where women are the end users. They do business, they're into finance and banking. If it's in a mercurial sign like Virgo or Gemini, they go into communication or analytics. All right, usually people are very intelligent with Rahu in the 10th house. They do multiple things and can be very successful people. If you have Rahu in the 10th house, you can also have lots of money and become a multi-millionaire if you have Rahu in the 10th house. Okay, so that's about Rahu in the 10th house. Let's look at Rahu in 11th house. Rahu in 11th house is a fantastic position. Very good, strong position for Rahu. Okay, now what I've noticed with Rahu in the 11th house, that you're mostly the oldest sibling in the family. So if you are, please mention in the comments. All right. In most cases, if you have Rahu in the 11th house, you are the oldest in the family. Or if you're a male, you'll be the oldest male in the family. Or if you're you may not have any older siblings. That same applies for women as well. Okay, Rahu in the 11th house is considered very good, especially if it's in Aquarius, Taurus, Virgo, Gemini, even to some extent Cancer. It's considered really good. Okay. Capricorn is considered very good. So why? Because the 11th house is the house of your incoming gains. It's the house of your network circle, your friends. And in today's world, everything is network, social media, So in today's world, Rahu in 11th house is considered very good because it expands your incoming gains. We have to check the depositor of your 11th house. Okay, we have to see where that planet is, like I've explained in the first part of the video, to make sure that planet is well placed. Okay, if that planet is well placed, then Rahu is going to give you lots of money. It's a fantastic placement for any kind of business that you do, or anything to do with the PR, the world outside, networking with other people, food and beverages industry, alcohol industry, in multinational companies. Very good. Anything to do where lots of people and lots of interaction is involved. Also good position for research and analysis work, research work, especially if it's in the sign of Aquarius or if it's a sign of Virgo. It's considered very good. Usually people have a huge network circle with Rahu in the 11th house. Okay, now let's talk about things which are not so good. Now Rahu in the 11th house could give you bad company. Okay, So if you have Rahu in the 11th house, you need to be very careful who you let in your friend circle, because Rahu may give friends who don't mean very well for you, or it could give you a network circle where they are involved in illegal activities. So you need to be careful with this particular placement. Okay. The other thing I want to say about Rahu in the 11th house is Rahu in the 11th house may cause a lot of, if you have an older sibling, it may give you a lot of friction with your older sibling, or your relationship with your older sibling may not be very good. Okay. So that is something I have noticed as well. Apart from this, unless the sign is not very good, Rahu does very, very good. Be careful a little bit about your expenditure, because Rahu can make you very, very spendthrift, because Rahu wants to increase your network circle. So these people, every weekend they might have different friends calling them up and say, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So they at times forget a track, they don't have a track of what they have to do. They could be a little all over the place. So be a little careful, and also do not indulge in intoxication, because Rahu will keep throwing opportunities. Oh, let's go have a drink here, let's smoke, let's do this, let's do some drugs. So stay away from all those things when you have Rahu in this particular. But overall, it's a very good position for Rahu. Okay. Now let's look at Rahu in the 12th house. So Rahu in the 12th house gives you, it's not a good position. Firstly, Rahu in the 12th house gives a person lots of expenses. These people don't have a track of expenses, and they could have unforeseen expenses, and they could be hospital or health related. Okay, so if you have Rahu in this particular placement, you need to be a little careful about your health. If you don't have a health insurance, do it right now. Okay. It also causes a person to be very isolated. These people usually sleep a lot. Okay, because Rahu expands the 12th house is the other realm, the dream world. They live in the dream world, and they they like to sleep a lot. They might be very, very fond of listening to music. They could be musicians themselves. Okay. They might have very strong ties and connections with hospitals, monasteries, anything to do with social work and helping others. Okay. They could also want to move to foreign lands. Okay, these are people who want or have spent a significant amount of years in a different country from where they were born. Okay, they could be also associated or surrounded with people from different parts. So they could be living in their own country, but they might be working or surrounded by people from other parts of the world, people who are not from their country. So if you are from Sri Lanka, you might be surrounded by people from Australia. Okay. So keep an eye on your feet, and anything that you can't see with your any body part that you can't see with your naked eyes, and you need a mirror to see that body part. It could have injuries, or could have issues with that particular body part. Rahu can cause some issues there. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else. If I've missed something out, or if you have certain questions, I'm happy to answer your questions in the comments section. Feel free to drop in your comments. I'm happy to interact with all of you. And if you want to reach out to me, you have my contact email and my WhatsApp here. So I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time, and that's all I have for this particular video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was useful for you. Thank you very much for your time. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.